Hello, my name is William James. I'm the host of The Bald Book Geek. And how are all of you? Before we get going, subscribe, share this content. That would be very useful. And do check out my podcast, The Viking Writer, on platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and so on. Many more, actually. So where are we? Marvel. Marvel are a company I have issues with, probably on the same level I have issues with Disney. So before everyone cancels me, I want to say I firmly support diversity and political opinion within written media. I do not support pushing ideology, and there is a very fine line between it. And this is a problem across comic book. This is not just a Marvel thing, but Marvel seem to be the most public perpetrators of it, where DC tend to aren't so in your face with it. Comic book stores as a whole seem to be fading, and people tend to be going more digital with comic books, partly I think because of the pricing, especially in Europe. The UK especially is shocking when it comes to graphic novel prices and manga. Like, it's shocking, and people are going online for it because they can read it on their iPad, their phone, their whatever, through monthly app subscriptions, through just downloading it, because it's cheaper than buying a single issue. So where do we start with this? First things first, Marvel seem to be alienating most of their fans, and when I was younger, I was definitely a Marvel fan, and then as I got older, I moved away from it. I moved away from Marvel, partly because I only really like the Ultimate Universe, and I used to read The Amazing Spider-Man and Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Daredevil. I've talked about this on my channel a very long time ago. It's a great take on the Daredevil myth. It doesn't do anything new, but it's a great way of doing it. Marvel didn't lose me, but I fell out of love with them. Not to do with that, but just because I wanted something maybe a little bit more serious. So when I was in my teens, I discovered things like Hellblazer, Vertigo Comics, DC, independent comics, stuff like that. There is a lot more to it than just Marvel and DC. Marvel in recent years have started hiring people for woke points. And the problem with that is they're hiring people that not only don't like the source material, don't like the audience, don't like the readers, they are very open about it. I mean, the Marvel writers on Twitter are not all of them. I would like to say there are some phenomenal Marvel writers even now, but there is a handful of people that just kind of come out the woodwork and I don't think do the company any favours. And I think when you have comic book shops, especially in America, not so much in England, but in the US, not stocking comic books because they don't like a said writer or this or that, don't you want money? At the end of the day, these are fading, and if you're having to fund yourself on the internet via Indiegogo or whatever e-begging platform you've got, there is a problem. But I think Marvel are alienating their fan base. I think slowly they are pushing out the fan base that started it all. When you look at sort of the heyday in the 90s and even into the noughties for me, it was a very different thing. Like, comic book stores were very different and attitudes were very different, and it's worrying that people are pushing ideologies into graphic novels because effectively, and if you don't like the audience you're writing for, that's a major problem, effectively you're alienating everyone. You are pushing your own audience out and they're going somewhere else. I think, the whole woke Disney argument and all of this, there's countless other things, like Marvel Films and Disney, the interlink there, and that's going to be a video into itself with Disney. But I feel like this current brood of writers that are pushing this weird ideology and this sort of their own political ideology into it and don't like the audience, don't like the readers, don't like the characters, are the ones that are going to be the coffin nails for a company. And it worries me that it is alienating the audience. At the end of the day, you've got to keep your audience. And if you're alienating the audience and not getting new audience, that's a problem. I mean, for example, my friend's little boy, he's now, I say little boy, he's 12. He is growing up at a frightening speed. And a few years ago, he was when he started getting into comics, he was very into Marvel. That's where he was. But he's hit 12 and he started reading more DC stuff. Probably my influence there, because I'm like, oh, you need to read this Batman and Catwoman and all of this. What worries me is that audience that you're meant to be cultivating, even children, are being kind of pushed out because they can't relate to these stories. It isn't about heroes fighting crime or dealing with their own personal struggles. It's more about heroes with political ideology being rammed down the reader's throat, and that not only alienates children because they can't understand it, but it alienates the core fan base. Alienation is not a good thing, and with the industry in the state that it's in, where independent comics are outselling mainstream releases and small, I'll use the word art house comics, small publication comic books are outselling everything, that there is a problem. There is a big problem. What makes me laugh is this go, oh, well, we're doing this, but now we're going to blame the people they're meant to be, blame the core audience for not buying their books. The problem is they're not. They're not buying these books because they're not interested in having a political agenda pushed down their throat. They're interested in having a good story that's well written. Comic books have always been political. There has always been a political subtext, especially since the 70s and into the 80s and things got darker. There was always a subtle political context, be it science fiction, be it whatever. There is always that. They're usually a reflection of the world now, with metaphors. The intelligent, soft metaphors that many comic books had have gone. Marvel are very guilty of this. There's no subtext with many things. There is still some great Marvel, I want to point that out, but sometimes it's like, Marvel, do you not care about your core audience? Or are you just trying to appease people that will attack you on Twitter? Or are you just doing it for brownie points with the woke crowd? Marvel need to be careful because they're crossing into very dangerous territory, and I do feel like a lot of their current writers just need to be fired because they're not very good. And, when they're openly admitting stuff on Twitter, it's worrying that they're doing this. They're alienating their core audience because their core audience just want a good story. They don't care about socialism or politics or this or that. They just want a good story. And they don't want people shitting on the legacy of these characters. So, tell me what you think in the comments below. As always, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.